While my ex-husband Greg toasts to new beginnings with his executive assistant Natalie at the oceanfront restaurant I once dreamed of visiting for our anniversary, I'm signing closing documents on the Bluewater Bay estate he's coveted for 15 years. As he plans his promotion celebration at his firm where he's about to be named junior partner, I'm orchestrating the most elegant housewarming imaginable in the home he called his someday success symbol. He has no idea that his simple-minded homemaker has been the silent equity partner in Crawford Development Group for the past 18 months, the very company that just passed him over for the senior partnership he's been chasing. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from and if this story resonates with you. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because tomorrow's video reveals what happens when he discovers exactly whose name is on the deed to his dream property. My hand is steady as I sign another document, a quiet smile playing at my lips. Through the window of my attorney's office, I can see the Bluewater Bay coastline where Greg proposed 8 years ago. The irony isn't lost on me. The same view he promised we'd wake up to someday when he made it big will now be mine alone. The same view that appeared in every vision board he created, now captured through windows that belong to me. Ms. Winters, are you completely sure about the timing? Claire, my attorney, watches me with a mixture of admiration and concern, her tortoiseshell glasses catching the afternoon light as she prepares another document from her leather portfolio. We could always wait until... I turn my phone toward her, showing Greg's latest Instagram story. The timestamp reads 4 minutes ago. Working hard pays off. Time to celebrate life's victories with those who truly understand ambition. Blessed and grateful, climbing higher. The photo shows champagne flutes at the Harborview's exclusive rooftop lounge. I'd recognize Natalie's emerald bracelet anywhere in the frame, the one I helped Greg select for her administrative professionals day gift last year, when I still believed his explanations. The timing, I say, signing another paper with a flourish, is absolutely perfect. My phone buzzes with a text from Greg. Working late tonight. Important client meeting about the Crawford project. Don't wait up. THX for understanding. I've saved every message like this from the past 7 months. Each one corresponds perfectly with credit card charges at upscale restaurants, boutique hotels, or jewelry stores. The ones he doesn't realize I've meticulously documented. The ones that align precisely with Natalie's suddenly lavish lifestyle displayed on social media, each post featuring subtle hints about her supportive mentor and life upgrade. What they don't know is that I've been aware for months. Every business dinner, every client emergency, every suspicious withdrawal from our joint savings account. I've recorded it all. But unlike what most might expect from a betrayed wife, I didn't confront him. I didn't throw his tailored suits onto the front lawn or key his precious Tesla. Instead, I did what I've always done best. I observed, I learned, and I planned. This document, Claire points to a particular page, finalizes the purchase once you sign. There's no backing out after this. I think about this morning, how Greg kissed my cheek before leaving for work. How he mentioned we should take that vacation to Bali sometime when things settle down at the office. Meanwhile, I'd already seen his reservation confirmation for a Bali beachfront villa, made for next month, not for us, but for him and Natalie, paid for with our joint investment funds. Good, I say, my signature flowing across the page. That's exactly what I want. My phone lights up with another notification. An Instagram story from Natalie showing off a distinctive blue jewelry box captioned simply, "He always knows exactly what I deserve." I screenshot it, noting the time and date. It matches perfectly with the purchase alert from our joint credit card monitoring app, the one Greg thinks I never check. The property inspection is completely finalized, Claire explains, organizing the papers into her embossed leather portfolio. Given what you've already uncovered about the property's significance to your husband and his negotiation attempts with Crawford Development, I'm actually impressed you managed to keep this acquisition completely under wraps. I finish her thought, pulling up a folder on my phone labeled Evidence. Here's every attempt he's made to purchase the property through his firm. The last one was just 3 weeks ago, another rejection. Interesting that he never mentioned it to me. Claire's eyes widen as she scrolls through the documents on my phone. This is remarkably thorough, she says. I've had plenty of free time, I say dryly. You know, with all his late client meetings. As if on cue, my phone buzzes with a notification from our neighborhood group chat, friends planning a summer barbecue next weekend. Greg responds immediately. Sorry, everyone, have to miss it. Flying to Chicago for the Crawford presentation. I suppress a smile. I know about that Chicago presentation, too. I've seen the hotel reservation in Napa Valley. First-class accommodations for 2 charged to our joint credit card. Last one? Claire says, sliding the final paper across her walnut desk. This registers the property transfer with the county. Once you sign this, it becomes official public record. I don't hesitate. My signature flows across the paper, years of quiet calculation channeled into each curve and stroke. Another notification pops up, Greg going live on Instagram from what's supposed to be preparation for his client meeting. The harbor view's distinctive copper bar railings are visible in the background. Let them celebrate, I say, standing up and smoothing my dress. The one Greg complimented this morning, not realizing it was new because he barely looks at me anymore. By tomorrow afternoon, they'll have an entirely different understanding of real estate. Claire gathers the papers, her expression both impressed and slightly concerned. You know, in 14 years of handling property disputes and high-value acquisitions, I've never seen anyone quite as strategic, I suggest, picking up my handbag. Or maybe just tired of being underestimated, she replies with a knowing smile. As I walk out of her office, my phone buzzes one last time. Greg sending his routine check-in. Presentation prep running long. Don't wait up. Grabbing dinner with the team. I smile, typing back. No problem. Actually, I have some exciting news to share tomorrow. Sleep well. He'll think it's just another supportive message from his unsuspecting wife. But then again, he always did mistake my quiet observation for simple-mindedness. That's about to become his most expensive misconception. Little does he know that while he's been playing real estate investor at his firm, I've been cultivating relationships with actual developers. 3 years ago, when his mother had her health scare, I was the one who helped manage her investment portfolio, while Greg was too swamped at work to assist her. He never bothered to read the thank you letter from Crawford Development that his mother received, the one mentioning her daughter-in-law's impressive financial insights. He never questioned where I went on Tuesday afternoons, assuming my book club was just another housewife gathering over wine and gossip. If he'd paid attention, he might have wondered why my book club included Crawford Development's VP of Acquisitions, their chief financial strategist, and the company founder's daughter, Emily Crawford. Tomorrow morning can't come soon enough. The moment when Greg realizes that the partnership he's been chasing will never be his, and the house he's dreamed of owning now belongs to the woman he dismissed as just a housewife. The morning after signing those life-changing documents, I dress with meticulous care. A Diane von Furstenberg wrap dress in deep sapphire, Stuart Weitzman pumps, and the delicate pearl earrings Greg's grandmother gave me last Christmas. For the woman who takes care of my grandson. The mirror reflects exactly what Greg expects to see. His perfectly groomed wife, the former kindergarten teacher he loves to introduce as his beautiful better half at firm gatherings. If he only knew I spent 4 years as a property investment consultant before we met, before I chose to support his career and build our home. Good morning, darling, I call out as he stumbles into our travertine-tiled kitchen, his eyes still puffy from last night's client meeting. The coffee machine hums quietly, filling our $1 $2 million suburban colonial with the aroma of his favorite Ethiopian blend. I made your breakfast, I say, sliding a plate of avocado toast across our quartz countertop. The same counter where I'd sat until 1 a.m. last night on a secure video call with Emily Crawford. Emily, who now serves as Crawford Development's Chief Investment Officer. Emily, who nearly choked on her wine when I walked her through my proposal for the Bluewater Bay property 6 months ago. Emily, whose father founded the very company where Greg has been desperately trying to climb the partnership ladder. "You're too good to me, Olivia," Greg mumbles, checking his phone before he's even had his first sip of coffee. His lock screen is still our vacation photo from Santorini last summer, but I've glimpsed his home screen, Natalie posing on his Tesla's hood. I've seen it reflected in our kitchen window when he thinks I'm focused on cooking dinner. "Another early presentation?" I ask innocently, watching him shovel breakfast into his mouth while scrolling through emails. "Yeah, the Crawford account is killing me." He runs a hand through his carefully styled hair, distracted. "Johnson is breathing down my neck about it." The Crawford account, the one Emily personally confirmed to me, has already been reassigned to another team. The one Greg hasn't been involved with for over 2 months, though he doesn't know I'm aware of this. "Don't work too hard," I say, squeezing his shoulder. He doesn't notice me taking a photo of his phone screen reflected in the toaster's chrome surface, capturing Natalie's message about their lunch plans at Le Bernardin after he wraps up that boring meeting. After he leaves, I transform our home office. The framed photos of our wedding at the Botanical Gardens disappear into drawers, replaced by property records, bank statements, and investment portfolios. My friend Rebecca, a real estate attorney I've known since college, sits cross-legged on my custom West Elm rug, surrounded by papers. "Jesus, Olivia," she mutters, holding up a document. "Did he really think he could hide these property viewings? From you? He used your joint email for the realtor confirmations." I laugh, but there's no humor in it. He registered for the Bluewater Bay estate viewings under his middle name, the one he never uses except on legal documents. Rebecca shakes her head, adding the paper to our growing evidence pile. "Men like Greg always think they're the smartest person in the room." "That's because they never bother looking around," I reply, pulling up another document on my laptop. "Look at this. Every time he meets Natalie at a hotel, he files it as a business development expense. 5-star accommodations with a woman who's supposedly his assistant, despite her having no qualifications beyond being a former promotional model." My phone buzzes. A group text from our friend Thomas about his upcoming dinner party. Greg responds immediately with another excuse. Natalie, I notice when checking social media, has already posted about having surprise weekend plans. "They're getting careless," I observe, adding another screenshot to my collection. "Have you talked to Emily about the Crawford partnership yet?" Rebecca asks. I nod, pulling up an encrypted email chain. "She's ready. The moment we file the property transfer today, she'll share the news with the board about the partnership decisions. The same meeting where they'll reveal that Natalie's LinkedIn profile has completely fabricated credentials, including a Harvard MBA she never earned." My phone lights up with Greg's face, his daily check-in call. I answer with practiced cheerfulness, listening to him lie about his lunch meeting while I stare at their restaurant reservation confirmation in my email. The same email account he set up for me, thinking I'd only use it for online shopping. "Miss you too, honey," I say, watching Rebecca roll her eyes. "Don't forget we have dinner with your parents tonight." He pauses, and I can practically hear him texting Natalie to reschedule their evening plans. "Of course, babe. Wouldn't miss." "Dark." After hanging up, I turn to Rebecca. "He'll cancel in about 3 hours. Emergency client meeting." "How can you be so sure?" I pull up Natalie's Instagram story from this morning, a cryptic post about a special evening surprise at the new rooftop bar at the Wellington, because I know their routine better than they do. The rest of the day unfolds with surgical precision. I attend my regular volunteer committee meeting at the Children's Museum, where I serve as a fundraising coordinator. I make appearances at my usual lunch spots. I even get my hair trimmed at the salon where Greg's sister works as a stylist. Everything normal. Everything routine. No one would suspect that in my Tory Burch leather tote, I'm carrying documents that will upend 8 years of Greg's careful deceptions. Right on schedule at 4:23 p.m., Greg texts, "Babe, I'm so sorry. Might have to rain check dinner with my parents. Emergency meeting with the Crawford team." I respond with just the right amount of disappointment and understanding, watching through my banking alerts app as he makes a dinner reservation at Vertigo, his and Natalie's favorite spot for their strategy sessions. The Crawford team hasn't scheduled any meetings. I would know. Emily texts me their itinerary every morning. "Look what just came in," Rebecca says, holding up her phone. Natalie's posted a photo of champagne glasses at sunset, the Wellington's distinctive copper fire pits unmistakable in the background. "Perfect," I say, adding the screenshot to our collection. That receipt will match beautifully with the emergency business dinner he's about to charge to his corporate card. As evening falls, I sit in our meticulously decorated living room, surrounded by evidence of Greg's double life and my own careful documentation. Every lie, every secret meeting, every hidden property viewing, all of it meticulously cataloged and cross-referenced. My phone buzzes with another Instagram notification. Natalie wearing a new Versace dress that costs more than her supposed monthly salary, captioned with a single diamond emoji. I save it to the folder marked Tomorrow and pour myself a glass of Veuve Clicquot from the collection Greg thinks only he has access to in our wine refrigerator. "Let them have their romantic evening," I murmur, scanning through the latest property transfer confirmation email Emily sent over. Let them think they're the clever ones playing their little game of hide-and-seek with the naive housewife. I've spent months building this facade of ignorance, and in less than 12 hours, I'll have the pleasure of watching it shatter along with everything else they thought they could take from me. The property transfer records finished processing online. Rebecca calls from her office, her voice tight with excitement. "You're officially the owner of 145 Bluewater Bay Road. Congratulations, homeowner." I join her via video call, my heels clicking against our hardwood floors. On her screen, the property listing unfolds in all its glory, a masterpiece of architectural design perched on the bay's most coveted peninsula. "The previous owner accepted your offer over 4 others," Rebecca explains, "including one from Crawford Development submitted by Greg," I finish, a cold smile playing at my lips. "Show me the dates of his offers." Rebecca pulls up a timeline, and my smile widens. Just as I thought. He started pursuing the property the day after he met Natalie at that charity auction. He never even bothered to hide his browser history when looking at Bluewater Bay real estate listings. My phone chimes with a message from Greg's mother. "Darling, are you and Gregory still coming for dinner? I've had Maria prepare his favorite paella." Poor Helen Preston, still believing her son is the same responsible young man who followed his father's footsteps into commercial real estate. Wait until she discovers how her precious boy has been treating his wife while pursuing a bachelor pad for himself and his assistant. "What about the mortgage documents?" Rebecca asks, pulling up another file. "The ones with his signature forged on them?" "Letter 337, Section C," I quote from memory. "Any spouse attempting to secure property financing using false spousal consent can be subject to immediate credit investigation and reporting." Rebecca's eyes gleam. And with Natalie's social media trail, every post, every photo, every location, check in. All matching perfectly with Greg's business development charges and overnight client meetings, I confirm, pulling up a carefully curated folder on my laptop. They've documented their own misconduct better than we ever could. My phone lights up with another check-in from Greg. "Just wrapped the emergency meeting, babe. Might be a late one. So much paperwork to review for tomorrow's presentation." I text back, "Don't work too hard, darling. Make sure you eat something." Through the window, I can see the lights of the Wellington glowing in the distance. knowing they're up there right now celebrating what they think is their perfect deception. Greg probably congratulating himself on how skillfully he's managed to hide his relationship from his simple homemaker wife. Natalie no doubt already planning how to decorate the Bluewater Bay house once Greg secures his partnership and divorces me. Emily just confirmed, Rebecca says, checking her phone. The partnership announcements are scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. The moment the property transfer hits the public record, she'll ensure Greg sees it. I nod, walking to our floor-to-ceiling windows. The city skyline sparkles back at me, a constellation of lights that seems to mirror the intricate web of evidence we've woven. Olivia? Rebecca's voice turns serious. Are you absolutely sure about the timing? We could wait until after his birthday next week. His whole family will be there. I turn back to her, thinking of the invitation I'd helped Helen design. The lavish celebration planned at the country club where Greg intends to hint at his big news, the partnership he believes is a sure thing, the beginning of his new life with Natalie that would be financed by the firm's increased salary and bonuses. The timing, I say, picking up another stack of documents, is exactly right. Let him stand in front of his entire family ready to make his big announcement. Let him feel that moment of anticipation. Rebecca raises an eyebrow. Right before Emily announces Andrew Miller as the new partner instead, and the property records show you as the owner of his dream house. Poetic, isn't it? My phone buzzes again. A text from Natalie to our charity committee group. So sorry to miss tomorrow's meeting, everyone. Last-minute client emergency. The same meeting where we're supposed to discuss the annual Children's Hospital Gala that Greg's firm sponsors. I add the screenshot to our evidence file, then pull up the latest bank statement. The numbers that Greg thinks only he understands glow on the screen. If he'd ever bothered to look closely, he'd have noticed that every major withdrawal, every significant transfer has required dual authentication for the past year. One code from him, one from me. I've watched every dollar he's tried to hide, every account he's attempted to open, every lie he's built his house of cards upon, all while playing the role he assigned me. The beautiful, naive wife who couldn't possibly understand the complexities of real estate investment. His firm's partner meeting just confirmed. Rebecca checks another message. Boardroom, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Greg is supposed to present his final pitch for the Crawford Development deal. I smile, remembering the fabricated presentation he's been working on, the fake projections he's created to mask the fact that Crawford Development already rejected his proposal weeks ago. Perfect. That gives Emily's team plenty of time to arrive by 9:30 with the partnership announcement. My phone lights up with a final notification for the night. Greg sending a photo of paperwork scattered across his desk. Actually, the Wellington's distinctive stationery visible in the corner. Still grinding, babe. Don't wait up. I text back a single heart emoji, then turn to Rebecca. Shall we finish? Preparing his wake-up call? For the next few hours, we meticulously review every document, every piece of evidence, every single detail of what's about to unfold. By the time Rebecca leaves, the sun is starting to rise over the city, painting our living room in shades of gold that match the embossed letterhead of Crawford Development. I hear Greg's key in the door around 5:30 a.m. He tries to be quiet, but his Italian leather shoes still click against the marble foyer tiles. I'm already in the kitchen, perfectly dressed, makeup flawless, starting the coffee maker. You're up? Early, he says, trying to hide his surprise and the faint trace of Natalie's signature Joe Malone perfume on his collar. Thought you could use some breakfast after your late night. I smile, sliding him a cup of coffee. Must have been some important client presentation. You know how it is, he waves vaguely, not meeting my eyes. Sometimes these things can't wait. Oh, darling, I think, watching him check his phone under the table, no doubt messaging Natalie about their close call. You have no idea how right you are. Just a few more hours until Monday morning, when they learn exactly what happens, when you mistake silence for ignorance and underestimate the woman you vowed to cherish. Monday morning dawns clear and bright, the kind of early autumn day that makes the bay shimmer like polished glass. I wake up at precisely 6:15 a.m., though I've barely slept. Greg's side of our Egyptian cotton sheets is empty. He'd left early, eager to prepare for his big presentation to the firm's partners. If he only knew what else was being prepared. I dress with surgical precision. A theory pantsuit in charcoal gray, Jimmy Choo heels I purchased myself last month after Greg questioned why I needed more shoes, and his mother's vintage Mickey Moto. Pearls. A gift when we became engaged, symbolizing the family tradition he's about to betray. Every detail matters today. Every piece tells a story. Morning, beautiful. Greg's voice is unusually chipper when he calls at 7:30 a.m. Just wanted to check you're coming to the office for the partnership announcements, right? Thought you might want to see your husband's big moment. Wouldn't miss it for the world, darling, I reply, watching Emily send confirmation that the property records have been officially updated in the county database. Someone should be there to witness everything you deserve. He chuckles, missing my tone completely. That's my girl. See you at 9. I end the call and pull up the security feed from Greg's firm. Amazing what being friends with the IT director's wife grants you access to. Greg is already there, practicing his acceptance speech in the men's room mirror, adjusting his Hermes tie with nervous fingers. On another screen, I watch Natalie enter her favorite coffee shop, no doubt planning to celebrate with Greg after his big announcement. Her tote bag looks suspiciously full, probably containing a change of clothes for their surprise weekend she's been hinting about on Instagram. Everything's in position, Rebecca texts. She's already at the real estate office with Claire, waiting for the perfect moment. Emily just confirmed the partner announcement has been finalized. I check my watch. 8:15 a.m. Time to set the wheels in motion. My first stop is Crawford Development's headquarters, where I've been a familiar face since Emily invited me to their women's investment roundtable last year. Greg never bothered to attend these boring networking events with me. His loss. Mrs. Preston, Jackson, the security director, greets me warmly. Ms. Crawford mentioned you'd be stopping by. Is everything prepared as requested? I ask, taking a seat in the sleek reception area. The moment you give the signal, the announcement will go live on the company intranet, he confirms. The partnership decisions have already been loaded into the system. And the property listing? Jackson allows himself a small smile. Already updated on all real estate platforms with the new owner information. My phone buzzes. A message from Helen Preston, Greg's mother. Darling, we're so proud of Gregory today, and so grateful to have you as part of our family. You've been such a blessing. If she only knew how much of a blessing I was about to be, saving her from the embarrassment of her son's very public downfall. 8:45 a.m. I enter the gleaming office tower of Preston and Johnson Real Estate Development, nodding to security guards who know me as Greg's wife, not realizing I'm about to become much more notable in their corporate history. The elevator rides smoothly to the 37th floor where the firm's legacy has been built over 3 decades. Greg is waiting by the boardroom, practically bouncing with nervous energy. You made it! He kisses my cheek, and I catch a whiff of Natalie's perfume still lingering faintly on his skin. I've got such a good feeling about today. Oh, darling, I murmur, straightening his tie. You have no idea how memorable today is going to be. The boardroom fills quickly with partners and executives. Richard Johnson, the firm's founding partner and Greg's mentor, takes his place at the head of the table, looking every bit the successful patriarch in his tailored Tom Ford suit. Before we begin, Richard announces, I want to thank everyone for being here for this momentous occasion. As you know, we're here to announce our newest partner, and Gregory has prepared some thoughts on our ongoing collaboration with Crawford Development. Greg stands, straightening his presentation notes with practiced confidence. His PowerPoint presentation glows on the screen behind him, slides full of projections and plans that I know for a fact Crawford Development rejected weeks ago. "Good morning, everyone," he begins, flashing his perfect smile. Today marks a new chapter in Preston and Johnson's history. 8:59 a.m. My phone vibrates silently in my lap. Rebecca's message is simple. Ready. 9 a.m. Greg clicks to his first slide, pointing out fabricated growth projections with practiced charm. As you can see, our collaboration with Crawford Development has been exceptionally productive under my guidance. 9:01 a.m. I send a single text to Emily. Now. The effect is immediate but subtle at first. Greg's phone buzzes in his pocket, probably a notification from the real estate listing app he uses to track Bluewater Bay properties. He ignores it, continuing his presentation. It buzzes again. And again. And again. 9:02 a.m. The boardroom door opens silently. Emily Crawford enters, nodding to me imperceptibly. Behind her, 2 Crawford executives take their places by the door. "And if you'll look at these projected returns," Greg continues, though his phone is now buzzing constantly, causing him to look increasingly distracted, "you'll see that our innovative approach has..." His voice trails off as he notices Richard checking his own phone, frowning deeply. Other board members are doing the same, their expressions shifting from polite attention to confused concern. 9:05 a.m. Emily steps forward, elegant and composed in her Armani suit. "Mr. Preston," she says clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent boardroom. "I believe there's been some confusion about Crawford Development's position." Greg turns, annoyed at the interruption of his big moment. "I'm in the middle of something here, Ms. Crawford. Emily Crawford, Chief Investment Officer of Crawford Development Group." The color drains from Greg's face as he recognizes the name. "By unanimous decision of our board," Emily continues, "Crawford Development has chosen to partner exclusively with Andrew Miller's team for all future projects, effective immediately. Additionally, we felt it necessary to address certain misrepresentations about our company's interests and activities." Greg stands frozen, his perfect speech forgotten as Emily gestures to the screen. With a click of her remote, his presentation disappears, replaced by a slide showing his rejected proposals to Crawford Development, dated weeks ago. "There must be some mistake," he stammers, looking around the room desperately. His eyes land on me, seeking support, reassurance, the naive trust he's come to expect. Instead, he finds me calmly opening my laptop, pulling up the folder marked Evidence. "No mistake, darling," I say softly, turning the screen so the entire board can see. "Would you like to explain these documents to your colleagues yourself, or shall I?" The first image appears on the boardroom's main screen, replacing his fabricated presentation, a detailed spreadsheet of every false claim he's made about Crawford Development, every fabricated meeting, every manipulated projection. Behind him, Richard Johnson stands slowly, his face a mask of shock and growing fury. "Gregory," his mentor's voice is deadly quiet. "What is this?" Before he can answer, his phone buzzes one final time. He looks at it reflexively, and I know exactly what he's seeing. A notification from his real estate app that the Bluewater Bay property has been sold. "Perhaps," I suggest, standing smoothly and taking control of the presentation remote, "we should discuss the real status of Greg's relationship with Crawford Development, starting with these falsified meeting notes." Greg slumps into his chair as I take the floor. Behind him, Emily and her team begin setting up their own presentation materials. Through the boardroom's glass walls, I can see Rebecca and Claire arriving with boxes of additional documents. The day of reckoning has only just begun. "Let's start with this particular exchange," I say, clicking to the next slide. The boardroom screen fills with emails between Greg and Crawford Development from 3 months ago, the last time they actually communicated with him before reassigning the account. Interesting that these formal rejections somehow transformed into productive ongoing negotiations in your presentations to the firm, I observe, looking directly at Greg. His hands grip the armrests of his chair, knuckles white. Behind him, Richard Johnson has moved from shock to cold fury, his jaw clenched as he watches his protégé's deceptions laid bare. Of course, I continue, clicking through to the next slide. That was just the beginning. Shall we discuss the fabricated market analyses you've been presenting, or perhaps the series of client development charges at the Wellington that coincidentally match perfectly with these Instagram posts? The screen fills with a carefully curated collection of Natalie's social media posts side by side with Greg's expense reports. Times and dates perfectly aligned, each champagne toast, each surprise gift, each luxury weekend mathematically matched with a suspicious business expense. "This is ridiculous," Greg finally manages, his voice cracking. "These are legitimate business expenses. Richard, I can explain." "Explain what, exactly?" I interrupt smoothly, pulling up another document. "How you've been falsifying client meetings while conducting an affair with your assistant? Or should we discuss how you've been using company resources to fund your romantic weekends while planning to leave your wife?" A gasp ripples through the boardroom. Helen Preston, who had arrived just moments before to surprise her son on his big day, presses a hand to her chest, her face pale beneath her perfect makeup. "Leave you?" she whispers. "Gregory, what is she talking about?" "Oh, you didn't know?" I turn to my mother-in-law with practiced sympathy. "Greg and his assistant have quite the future planned. Would you like to see the Bali reservations? The engagement ring receipt? Or perhaps the new house he's been trying to purchase?" Greg lunges for his phone, probably to warn Natalie, but it's already too late. Through the boardroom's glass walls, we can see her being escorted into the building by security, her designer tote clutched to her chest like a shield. "Perfect timing," I murmur, checking my watch. Did you orchestrate all of this?" Greg's voice rises in disbelief. "Did you really think?" I cut in, my voice carrying clearly across the stunned boardroom. "That you could deceive your firm, betray your wife, and no one would notice? That no one would connect the dots between your falsified reports and your actual activities? You made me a silent observer in my own marriage, darling, so I became very, very observant. The executives from Crawford Development have set up their equipment now, efficiently displaying their actual development plans, the ones that don't include Greg or his team. Mrs. Preston," one of them calls out, "we've prepared a statement about the Bluewater Bay property as you requested." Greg's head snaps up. "Bluewater Bay? What does my wife have to do with—" "Who do you think has been documenting your deceptions all these months?" I ask quietly. "Who do you think has been tracking every lie, every secret meeting, every falsified report? The wife you thought was too naive to understand real estate? The trophy you believed would never question your business meetings?" His phone buzzes again, probably Natalie being brought to the conference room for questioning. Through the glass, I can see her mascara-streaked face as she realizes the magnitude of their situation. "I can fix this." Greg stands abruptly, desperation creeping into his voice. "Richard, just let me explain. We can handle this internally." "Sit down." Richard Johnson's voice could freeze hell itself. "You've done quite enough." "Actually," I interject, pulling up another document, "we're just getting started. Would anyone like to see who purchased the Bluewater Bay property this morning? The dream house Greg has been pursuing for years?" The next hour unfolds like a perfectly choreographed dance. With each new revelation, each piece of evidence, each damning document, Greg shrinks further into his chair. His carefully constructed world of lies crumbles slide by slide, fact by fact. "The property transfer has been completed," Rebecca announces, from the doorway. "All records are updated and the keys are ready for the new owner." Greg's head snaps up. New owner? Emily steps forward, a slight smile playing at her lips. Crawford Development is pleased to announce that 145 Bluewater Bay Road has been sold to Mrs. Olivia Preston. The sale was finalized this morning. A commotion outside draws everyone's attention. Natalie is being led to a separate conference room, her face a mask of panic as she realizes the serious nature of her situation. Through the glass, I watch her reach for her phone, probably to call the lawyer she thinks can save her career. Don't bother, I call out, loud enough for her to hear through the glass. HR already has your fabricated resume and credential documentation. Greg stands again, this time moving toward the door, but Emily's team shifts smoothly to block his path. This is insane, he sputters. You can't just... Can't what? I ask, my voice deadly quiet. Protect myself from your betrayal? Prevent you from lying to your firm about major clients? Or perhaps you're upset that I purchased the property you've been coveting, the one you planned to share with Natalie once you'd left me. I click to the next slide, and Greg actually flinches. It's a photo from last week. Him and Natalie at Tiffany's, shopping for what I'm quite certain wasn't an administrative professional's day gift. The credit card receipt for the purchase still pending in our joint account. Tiffany's? Helen. Preston's voice is barely a whisper. While you're still married to Olivia? Speaking of marriage, I continue, pulling up another document. Why don't you explain to everyone why you've been meeting with divorce attorneys? Or should I share the property division strategy you drafted last month? The boardroom is deadly. Silent now. Every eye fixed on Greg as he realizes just how completely his plans have imploded. His mentor stands slowly, every inch the powerful businessman whose trust his protege has betrayed. Get him out of my sight, Richard orders, his voice trembling with rage. And call legal, all of them. As security begins to escort Greg from the boardroom, his phone buzzes one final time. I know exactly what notification he's receiving. His access to the firm's offices has been revoked, his keycard deactivated, his credentials suspended. One more thing, I call out just as he reaches the door. You might want to pack a bag when you get home. I'll be moving to Bluewater Bay, and I've already arranged for the locks to be changed on our current house. Greg turns, his face a mask of disbelief. Where am I supposed to go? I smile, remembering all the nights I lay awake while he was with Natalie, planning this very moment. Perhaps you could stay at the Wellington? Oh, wait. Your corporate card has been suspended. Well, I'm sure Natalie would offer her sofa, but I glance meaningfully at the security team leading her to HR questioning. She might be a bit preoccupied. As Greg is led away from the boardroom, Helen Preston approaches me, tears in her eyes. Olivia, I'm so sorry. We had no idea he was... She gestures helplessly at the evidence still displayed on the screen. It's not your fault. I squeeze her hand gently. You raised a good son. He just made very, very bad choices. Rebecca appears at my side with another update. The firm's lawyers want to meet with you immediately, and Emily says Crawford Development is still interested in working with Preston and Johnson, just not with Greg's team. I nod, gathering my things as security continues their work. Through the glass walls, I can see Greg being escorted to the lobby, his world collapsing around him. His phone is probably exploding with notifications, suspended email access, canceled meetings, revoked privileges. Mrs. Preston, one of the Crawford executives, approaches. We'll need your signature on the final property transfer documents. Of course, I reply, smoothing my skirt as I stand. I believe I have everything you need right here. I pat my tote bag, filled with months of careful documentation, weeks of meticulous planning, and years of quiet observation. Greg thought he was so clever, playing his games with the firm's clients while his housewife smiled quietly at social functions. He never realized that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should fear the most. The next few hours unfold with the precision of a Swiss timepiece. From my temporary office in Preston and Johnson's executive suite, ironically, the one they'd been preparing for Greg's partner. Announcement. I watched the dominoes continue to fall through multiple screens and live feeds. His attempt to access the firm's client database was just blocked, Rebecca reports, monitoring the security alerts. He tried using his emergency credentials, the ones he thought only IT knew about. I smile, remembering how easy it was to find those passwords scribbled in his planner, the one he kept in his briefcase, believing I never looked through it. How many attempts? 5 so far, each one triggering another security alert to the firm's management. My phone buzzes with a notification from our home security system. Greg has arrived at the house, probably hoping to grab some essentials before the locksmith arrives. Through the camera feed, I watch him frantically shoving designer suits into his luggage, the same suits I helped him select, each one paid for with money he'd promised was being saved for our future. Should we tell him about the asset freeze? Rebecca asks, watching the feed over my shoulder. Let him figure it out, I reply, turning my attention to another screen showing the security team interviewing Natalie. Her confident facade has crumbled completely now, mascara streaking down her face as she realizes the full implications of falsifying credentials on her company profile. Mrs. Preston, Claire enters with a fresh stack of documents. The bank just called. They've frozen the joint accounts pending your petition for financial separation. I raise an eyebrow. And his personal accounts? They found irregular transfers from your joint savings. Everything's been flagged for review. Helen Preston, who's been sitting quietly in the corner trying to process the morning's events, lets out a small sob. The house fund? The one you two have been building for your future? I move to comfort my mother-in-law, the woman who welcomed me into her family with open arms 6 years ago. We've already secured those funds, Helen. The future just looks a little different now. My phone lights up with another notification. Greg attempting to check into the Four Seasons using his personal credit card. I can almost see the color drain from his face as the card is declined. Through various feeds and alerts, I track his increasingly desperate attempts. The Ritz-Carlton declined. The Peninsula declined. The St. Regis declined. His personal attorney just dropped him, Rebecca announces, checking her messages. Apparently, he tried to pay the retainer with the corporate card. The firm has ethical concerns about continuing to represent him. A commotion in the hallway draws our attention. Through the glass walls, we see Natalie being escorted out by security, her designer tote now filled with personal items from her desk. All that remains of her career at Preston and Johnson. She gave them everything, Claire confirms, reviewing the preliminary HR report. Every meeting, every falsified document, every promise he made. Turns out self-preservation trumps loyalty when termination for cause is on the table. My phone buzzes again, a group text from our social circle about the upcoming charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum. Greg's sister Elizabeth has already removed him from the planning committee. His name disappears from the guest list in real time, his social world crumbling as quickly as his professional one. The firm's audit team just found something interesting, Rebecca calls out, her eyes wide as she reads from her tablet. Remember those client development trips to Vail? I turn to her, intrigued. The ones where he claimed to be meeting with potential investors? He was actually viewing properties, high-end chalets. They found incomplete purchase agreements on his company laptop with both his and Natalie's names. Helen's head snaps up. He was planning to leave you and buy property with that. That woman? Using our joint savings, I confirm gently. But don't worry, he won't get the chance now. As if on cue, my phone shows another alert. Greg's personal credit line has been suspended pending investigation into potential unauthorized use of company funds. His world is shrinking by the minute, his options disappearing one by one. The firm's crisis management team is ready, Claire informs us. They've prepared statements for clients, partners, and industry publications. I nod, pulling up the draft announcements on my laptop. The careful wording presents Greg as a rogue employee whose deceptions were uncovered by vigilant management, while emphasizing the firm's swift action to protect client interests. No mention of my role, exactly as I planned. Olivia, Helen, speaks up, her voice stronger now. The annual family barbecue is next weekend, with Gregory's situation. Perhaps you should. Before I can respond, my phone buzzes with an urgent message from the home security team. Greg is trying to access his home office safe, the one he thinks contains emergency cash and backup, credit cards. Don't worry, I assure Helen, watching Greg's frustrated attempts through the security feed. I already emptied that safe last week. Everything of value is secure. Rebecca's tablet pings with another update. The forensic team just found his deleted emails. You're not going to believe what he was planning after he left you. I turn to the large screen on the wall, now displaying a complex web of Greg's intended post-divorce financial maneuvers. Even I'm impressed by the audacity, if not the intelligence, of his schemes. He was going to claim you mismanaged the joint accounts, Rebecca explains, highlighting various documents. Threaten a financial malfeasance suit unless you agreed, to a minimal settlement. Helen gasps. He would blackmail his own wife? He would try, I correct her, pulling up another document. But that would have been difficult considering I've had financial advisors reviewing and certifying every transaction in our accounts for the past 2 years. My phone lights up with another notification. Greg's attempt to access his cryptocurrency wallet, the one he thought I knew nothing about. Sorry, darling, I murmur to the screen. Those assets were transferred to a secure account last week, along with everything else you thought you'd hidden so cleverly. Through the office windows, I can see the sun climbing higher in the sky, bathing the city in golden afternoon light. In the reflection, I catch glimpses of security still combing through files, HR representatives processing Natalie's termination, and firm lawyers protecting Preston and Johnson's reputation from one man's deception. Mrs. Preston, a senior partner, approaches. We found evidence of potential ethical violations dating back 3 years. We'll need your statement about when you first noticed irregularities. I retrieve a carefully prepared timeline from my tote. I believe you'll find everything documented here. Every falsified client meeting, every unauthorized expense, every attempt to misrepresent the firm's relationship with Crawford Development. As the investigators continue their work, I receive one final notification for the day. Greg, having been denied access to every luxury hotel in the city, has checked into a budget airport motel, paid for with borrowed cash since his accounts remain frozen. Should we tell him about tomorrow? Rebecca asks, referring to the emergency board meeting where Greg will be formally terminated from Preston and Johnson. I shake my head, watching his location dot on my phone's map, so far from the privileged world he's always known. Let him sleep tonight thinking he can still fix this. Tomorrow's revelations deserve a fresh audience. Helen stands, gathering her composure along with her Burberry handbag. Olivia, we can never thank you enough for protecting the firm's reputation, for stopping him before he destroyed everything your family spent decades building. I finish gently. Helen, when you welcomed me into your family, you made me a Preston. I protect what's mine. As the office slowly empties, I remain at my desk, surrounded by evidence of Greg's betrayal and my own careful preparation. On one screen, I watch him pacing in his motel room, probably trying to figure out how his perfect plan imploded so spectacularly. On another, I see Natalie checking into a flight to her parents' home in Phoenix, her dreams of becoming Mrs. Preston evaporating like morning mist. My phone buzzes one last time, Greg trying to salvage something from the wreckage of his life. Baby, please, we need to talk. I can explain everything. I smile, thinking of all the nights I lay awake listening to his lies about working late, while I quietly built the case that would bring him down. "No need to explain, darling," I text back. "The firm's investigators have all the explanations they need." Then I turn off my phone, gather my things, and prepare to head to the Bluewater Bay property, the dream house that now belongs solely to me. Tomorrow will bring more revelations, more consequences, more dismantling of Greg's carefully constructed house of cards. But tonight, I'll sleep soundly in the master bedroom of the house he coveted, alone but victorious, while my husband learns. What happens when you mistake quiet patience for weakness and underestimate the woman who held the real power all along? Tuesday morning brings the kind of headlines you can't buy with PR spin. Preston and Johnson parts ways with senior executive amid misconduct allegations. Rising real estate stars fall from grace. Bluewater Bay estate sold in surprise transaction. I read them all from the comfort of my new home office in the Bluewater Bay property, sipping the rare white Darjeeling tea Greg always claimed was wasted on my unsophisticated palate. The irony of enjoying my favorite blend while watching. His world burn isn't lost on me. "The real estate community is in an uproar," Rebecca announces, entering with a fresh stack of news clippings. 3 other firms have already requested ethics audits of their senior teams. Apparently, Greg's scheme has everyone questioning their own executives. "His mother's on her way over," Claire adds, checking her phone. "The security gate just called." I nod, setting down my teacup. Helen Preston has always been the family's emotional center, and I know this visit won't be easy for her. "Olivia." Helen sweeps in, still elegant despite her obvious distress. "The press. Have you seen the latest? They're calling it the Preston Pretender." I guide her to the sitting area, the same one featured in the architectural magazine spread Greg had framed in his office. His vision of success now mine to enjoy. I note how her eyes linger on the empty spaces where family photos will eventually go. "The media will move on to the next scandal soon enough," I say, pouring her a cup of tea. "What matters is protecting your family's legacy and the firm's reputation." "The forensic accountants found something else," she says quietly, pulling out a folder. "Something worse." I take the documents, though I already suspect what they'll show. Greg hadn't just been falsifying client relationships. He'd been systematically undermining his colleagues' projects, including his own father's last development before retirement. "We knew he was ambitious, but this..." Helen's voice breaks. "Sabotaging his own father's work to position himself as the solution when problems arose." "Everything will be rectified," I assure her, outlining the recovery plan I'd prepared weeks ago. "Every project has been reviewed, every client relationship restored." My phone buzzes with an update from the firm's investigation team. They've found Greg's storage unit in the city. Inside, boxes of documents detailing years of professional manipulation. All the evidence they need for a complete termination for cause. "Mrs. Preston," my assistant calls from the doorway. "Mr. Greg is at the security gate, demanding to be let in. He's not taking no for an answer." I pull up the security feed on my laptop. Greg, disheveled and desperate, arguing with the guard. His Brooks Brothers suit, the one he wore to countless client presentations, is wrinkled from a night in the airport motel. "Should I call the police?" the assistant asks. "No need," I reply, pressing a button on my phone. "The restraining order is already in effect. Anonymous tip about a person violating a protection order should suffice." Helen flinches at my words but doesn't object. Even a mother's love has its limits. "The firm's board is meeting in an hour," Rebecca reminds me, checking her calendar. "They'll want your statement about Greg's client manipulations." I nod, gathering my materials. In the background, my screens show multiple scenes unfolding simultaneously. Greg being escorted from the property gates by police, Natalie giving a tearful interview to HR painting herself as another victim of his manipulation, security teams boxing up evidence from his office, industry publications speculating about the scandal's impact on upcoming development projects. "Olivia," Helen speaks up suddenly, "there's something I need to tell you about why Richard and I always supported your marriage to Gregory." I turn to my mother-in-law, curious. This is one piece of the puzzle I never fully understood. "We knew," she says simply, "about Gregory's tendencies, the cutting corners, the exaggerations that bordered on lies. Richard saw it happening at summer internships, watched him taking bigger and bigger risks with other people's projects. So you needed someone to ground him," I finish quietly. "Someone to be his moral compass." Helen nods, tears in her eyes. "We interviewed dozens of the young women he dated, considered which one might have the strength to guide him toward ethical success. When he brought you home, with your quiet confidence, your attention to detail, your unwavering moral center, Richard said we'd found the perfect partner for him. The housewife he thought he'd chosen for her homemaking skills rather than her mind," I add, understanding dawning. Helen manages a small smile. "When we learned about your background in property valuation, your experience with investment consultation, before you decided to focus on building a home, well, let's just say Richard always had an eye for talent." My phone buzzes again. More updates flooding in. Greg's membership at the country club, revoked. His position on the hospital charity board, suspended. His invitation to the mayor's economic development committee, rescinded. His father's law firm sent over a proposal, Rebecca mentions, holding up another document. He's offering to sign a full confession of professional misconduct in exchange for a monthly stipend. I almost laugh at the audacity. Let me guess, he still thinks he has something to negotiate with? He's claiming he has evidence of historical firm irregularities, says he'll go public if you don't meet his demands. This time I do laugh, pulling up a particular file on my laptop. "You mean these documents?" I turn the screen to show decades of pristine firm records, each transaction verified, each decision documented, each ethical compliance certified. The ones I've had independent auditors reviewing for the past 2 years? Through the window, I watch as Greg is driven away from the security gate in a police car, his final attempt at blackmail failing as spectacularly as his other schemes. On my other screens, Preston & Johnson continues operating smoothly. The transition of Greg's accounts to other teams already complete, client reassurance calls underway, damage control proceeding efficiently. "The board is ready," my assistant announces. "They're waiting in the main conference room at the firm." I gather my things, preparing to officially close this chapter of Preston & Johnson's history, and my own. Helen stands with me, straightening her shoulders with renewed dignity. "Olivia," she says softly, "thank you. Not just for stopping him, but for saving him from himself. If he'd continued much longer, the damage would have been irreparable. To the firm and to your family," I finish. "I know. That's why I had to act now." As we head to my car, my phone shows one final notification. Greg checking into an even cheaper motel, this time in the industrial district outside the city. How far the mighty have fallen. "Mrs. Preston," Claire calls out. "The restraining order has been formally served. The judge has set a hearing for next week for the formal separation proceedings." I nod, already prepared. My evidence is organized, my statement drafted, my strategy in place. Next week, Greg will learn the full extent of his mistakes. Not just the professional deception, but the fatal error of underestimating the woman he married. "One last thing," Rebecca adds. "The firm's PR team wants to know how to handle press inquiries about your role in uncovering the deception. They're calling you everything from corporate whistleblower to real estate avenger." "Tell them no." "Comment," I reply, stepping into my car. The evidence speaks for itself. As we drive toward the firm's headquarters, I think about the day Greg first brought me home to meet his family, how he introduced me as his beautiful former teacher, emphasizing my previous career while dismissing my business acumen, how he never questioned why his parents were so enthusiastic about our marriage, never wondered why his mother specifically mentioned my sharp mind for details in her wedding toast. His last text message still sits unanswered on my phone. Please, baby, just tell me what you want. I'll do anything. Too late, Greg. Too late by exactly 4 years, 3 months, and 17 days. The time it took me to document every lie, trace every deception, and prepare for this moment of perfect justice. The firm's conference room doors open, revealing the assembled board of directors. Time to show them exactly why Helen and Richard championed my marriage to their son, and why Greg's biggest mistake wasn't falsifying client relationships, but underestimating the woman who noticed everything. 1 month later, the dust has finally begun to settle. I sit in my new office at Preston & Johnson, the corner suite with views of both the bay and the city skyline, reviewing the latest client satisfaction reports. The real estate blogs have moved on to newer scandals, though the Preston affair still appears occasionally in ethics seminars and business school case studies. The Wall Street Journal piece just went live, Rebecca announces, entering with her tablet. Today's headline, Preston & Johnson Renaissance, How Ethical Oversight Saved a Family Firm. Any mention of Greg? I ask, though I already know the sigh. Answer. Only as a cautionary tale. They're calling it the ultimate case study in corporate governance. Your quotes about professional integrity are featured prominently. I smile, remembering the interview I'd given last week. I'd been careful to focus on the importance of proper oversight rather than personal drama. The Prestons, after all, still had a reputation to maintain. My phone lights up with a notification from the divorce attorney's office. Greg's settlement agreement has been finalized. In exchange for a modest monthly allowance, he's agreed to a complete non-disclosure agreement about our marriage and its dissolution. His new accommodations are quite a step down from Bluewater Bay, Rebecca observes dryly, showing me the address on the final paperwork. A 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat in the city's least fashionable district. Natalie sent another request, Claire adds, entering with more papers. She's offering to provide additional evidence about Greg's schemes in exchange for a reference letter. Tell her the firm already has everything they need, I reply, pulling up our evidence files. Her Instagram posts provided more than enough documentation. Through my office windows, I can see the firm's investment team hard at work under new leadership. They've already recovered from the scandal, client confidence restored, new projects underway. Mrs. Preston, my assistant calls over the intercom. The design team is ready for your final approval on the model home interiors for the Harbor View development. I gather my materials, including the comprehensive design plan I've developed since taking over as head of residential development, the position Greg always wanted, now mine by unanimous board decision. Olivia, Helen greets me warmly as I enter the conference room. She's embraced her role as board chair with remarkable grace, treating me more as a daughter than ever now that I've helped save her family's firm from her own son's deception. The development community is calling you the residential visionary, Richard adds with a proud smile. He's fully enjoying his semi-retirement, knowing the firm is in capable hands. Speaking of community reactions, Rebecca interjects, checking her messages. Greg's old colleagues have been quite active. The Real Estate Association just voted to suspend his license pending the ethics investigation. I take my place at the head of the conference table, the same spot where Greg once practiced his fraudulent client presentations. The symmetry isn't lost on me. Before we begin, I address the assembled team. I want to share some updates about our new ethical compliance measures. My presentation outlines the system I've implemented, multiple layers of verification, regular audits, transparent reporting, everything Greg tried to circumvent now strengthened beyond manipulation. The investigation team found something interesting. In Greg's old files, Claire mentions during a break, a draft of his acceptance speech for the partnership announcement, the one that never happened. He was going to thank you for supporting him from the sidelines, she adds with a raised eyebrow. How generous, I comment dryly. Nothing says appreciation like being relegated to the background of your own marriage. My phone buzzes with another update. Greg's lawyer making one last desperate attempt at negotiation. He's offering to reveal the location of additional evidence in exchange for an increased monthly allowance. Tell him not to bother, I instruct Claire. We've already found everything, including the storage locker he rented under his mother's maiden name. The afternoon brings a steady stream of positive developments. The Bluewater Bay property has been featured in Architectural Digest. The firm's ethical standards are being adopted as an industry best practice. My redesign of the Harborview development has generated record pre-sales. Helen's sister called, Rebecca informs me. She's requesting your help with her children's trust funds. Says she can't think of anyone better to structure their future financial security. I accept the responsibility with a nod. The Preston children's futures will be secure, a stark contrast to their cousin's current situation. The industry publication wants to know if you'll give the keynote at next month's development conference, my assistant mentions. You're being recognized for innovation in residential community planning. Confirm the attendance, I decide. But keep the focus on sustainable development, not personal achievement. As evening approaches, I review one final set of documents, the complete record of the past month. Greg's professional misconduct documented, his attempt to hide assets prevented, his divorce settlement finalized, his reputation in the industry permanently damaged, justice served. My phone shows one last notification for the day. Greg's final attempt to access his old client contacts from a public library computer. Even now, he hasn't quite accepted his new reality. Should we tell him about the foundation? Rebecca asks, referring to the new Preston Family Ethics and Business Scholarship I've established at the local university. Let him read about it in the business section, I reply, closing my laptop. I hear they deliver newspapers even to budget apartments. Diana appears in my doorway, her eyes bright with maternal pride. Olivia, we just got the final numbers for the quarter. The firm's performance under your leadership, it's the best in 15 years. We stand together at my office window, watching the sunset over Bluewater Bay. Somewhere in a cramped apartment, Greg sits alone, probably wondering how his perfect life unraveled so completely. Somewhere across the country, Natalie works at her parents' insurance agency. Her dreams of real estate glamour shattered like the trust she helped betray. And here I stand in the office that once represented everything Greg thought he deserved, protecting the legacy he tried to exploit, living in the home he coveted but could never attain. My phone buzzes with an incoming email, another publication requesting an interview about residential development innovation. They're calling me the new face of ethical real estate, the woman who modernized a traditional family firm while maintaining its core values. I smile, thinking of all the strategy meetings where Greg explained basic market concepts to his simple housewife, never realizing he was lecturing a trained property valuation expert about his own impending downfall. The firm's lawyers want to know if I'll consider writing a book, Rebecca adds, about maintaining integrity in family businesses. Perhaps, I muse, gathering my things for the day. I certainly have enough material. As I prepare to leave, my security feed shows Greg's few remaining possessions being removed from our former home. His beloved wine collection, his designer wardrobe, his carefully curated art pieces, all being liquidated to cover legal fees. One last thing, Claire calls out. The ethics board wants to know if you'll testify at his license revocation hearing next month. I consider this, remembering every lie, every betrayal, every moment he underestimated me. No need, I decide. The evidence speaks for itself. Stepping into my car, the new Aston Martin I purchased to celebrate my promotion, I think about the day Greg first brought me home to meet his family, how he showcased me like a trophy, never bothering to look deeper than the surface, how he dismissed my interest in the family business as cute curiosity. My phone holds his final message, sent through his lawyer this morning. I finally understand what you were protecting, what I threw away. I'm sorry. Too late, Greg. You never realized that the real power wasn't in the corner office or the dream house, but in the trust you betrayed and the woman you underestimated. Now you have the rest of your life to contemplate the true cost of mistaking silence for ignorance and a housewife for a fool. 6 months after Greg's spectacular downfall, I stand on the sprawling terrace of the Bluewater Bay estate, watching the sunrise paint the horizon in shades of amber and gold. The property has been completely transformed under my direction. Every room redesigned, every detail reimagined to reflect my vision rather than the masculine power statement Greg had always fantasized about. The fitness room he'd planned as a personal gym showcasing his rowing trophies is now a serene yoga studio, where I host weekly wellness retreats for women rebuilding their lives after divorce. The basement he'd designated for a scotch collection and cigar lounge has become a community meeting space where I teach financial literacy classes to local women, many of whom find themselves navigating property laws and investment strategies for the first time. The garden landscape architects just sent over the final renderings. Eliza, my new personal assistant, announces as she joins me on the terrace, tablet in hand. She's a recent graduate from the local university's horticulture program, talented, dedicated, and appropriately compensated for her expertise, unlike how Greg treated Natalie. They've incorporated all your suggestions for the meditation garden and butterfly sanctuary, she continues, showing me the detailed plans. Construction can begin next month if you approve. I nod, taking in the designs that will transform the remaining acre of property into a peaceful retreat, rather than the ostentatious entertaining space Greg had envisioned with its planned, putting green and outdoor sports bar. Perfect, I say, making a few notes on the tablet. And has Rebecca confirmed the zoning approval for the Women's Resource Center on the adjacent lot? Just came through yesterday, Eliza smiles. The planning committee was apparently impressed by your presentation. The chairwoman specifically mentioned that it was refreshing to see the property used for community benefit rather than another vanity project for the ultra-wealthy. I can't help but smile at the irony. The adjacent lot, the one Greg had, secretly attempted to purchase for a private tennis court, will now host a center providing legal aid, financial counseling, and career resources for women in transition. The perfect complement to my growing initiative supporting those who, like me, had been underestimated but refused to remain powerless. My phone chimes with the morning's first notification, an interview request from Forbes for their Women Reshaping Real Estate feature. Another opportunity to share my journey from just a housewife to the driving force behind the fastest-growing community development consultancy in the region. Your 9 o'clock is here, Eliza informs me, checking the security camera feed on her tablet. It's Helen Preston. Despite everything, Helen and I have maintained a close relationship. Unlike her son, she recognized my value from the beginning and has become both mentor and ally in my new ventures. Send her up to the morning room, I instruct, straightening my Acris pantsuit. And please have Thomas prepare her favorite tea, service. As I wait for my former mother-in-law, I review the latest updates on my tablet. Preston & Johnson has fully recovered from the scandal of Greg's departure. Their reputation rehabilitated through transparent leadership and ethical reforms, many of which I helped design before stepping away to focus on my own ventures. Crawford Development has become my primary investment partner, with Emily and I jointly spearheading a new initiative focused on sustainable residential communities designed specifically for professional women. Our first project broke ground last month, with a waiting list already forming for the planned residences. Olivia, darling, Helen greets me with a warm embrace as she enters. Always elegant in her Chanel suit, she carries herself with the quiet dignity that has sustained her through the public embarrassment of her son's professional disgrace. You look wonderful, I say, genuinely pleased to see her. Retirement clearly agrees with you. Semi-retirement, she corrects with a smile, accepting the Earl Grey that Thomas has prepared precisely to her preference. The foundation keeps me busy enough. Speaking of which, she places a leather portfolio on the table between us, opening it to reveal detailed plans for the Preston Family Foundation's newest initiative, a scholarship program for women pursuing careers in real estate development and property law. The board unanimously approved your proposal, she announces proudly. The Olivia Preston Scholarship for Women in Real Estate will launch this fall with its first 5 recipients. I feel a momentary pang at the name, still legally mine, though increasingly disconnected from the man whose poor choices had inadvertently launched my professional renaissance. That's wonderful news, I respond, reviewing the documents. Have you spoken with the university about the mentorship component? Helen nods, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. The dean of the business school is thrilled. They've already identified faculty advisors willing to participate. Which brings me to my next question. She hesitates, and I know immediately what she's about to ask. It's the same question she's been delicately approaching for months. You want me to serve as the program's executive director, I finish for her. You're the perfect choice, Olivia. Your story resonates with exactly the kind of women we want to support. Talented professionals whose potential has been overshadowed or dismissed. I consider the offer carefully, though I've anticipated this moment. Taking on this role would complete a circle of sorts, from the underestimated spouse to a powerful advocate for the next generation of women in real estate. I'd be honored, I tell her honestly, on one condition. Helen raises an eyebrow, waiting. The foundation must expand its focus beyond scholarships to include legal support for women navigating divorce after financial deception. Too many women lose everything because they can't afford proper representation when their spouses hide assets. She doesn't hesitate. Consider it done. I'll have the attorneys draft the amended mission statement immediately. As we finalize the details, my phone buzzes with a news alert. I glance at it briefly, then set it aside, but not before Helen notices my momentary distraction. Is everything all right? She asks, her intuition as sharp as ever. I consider deflecting, then decide against it. Helen has earned my honesty many times over. It's Greg, I explain, showing her the notification. The Real Estate Ethics Board has denied his application for license reinstatement. Again. Helen's expression dims with the familiar mix of disappointment and resignation that mentions of her son now evoke. This would be his 3rd rejection, she notes quietly. Has he been in contact with you? I shake my head. The divorce has been final for 4 months. The restraining order expired without need for renewal. The financial settlements executed to the letter of our agreement. Greg's desperate attempts to reach me had dwindled after the first 3 months, replaced by occasional formal communications through our respective attorneys. Not directly. His lawyer submitted a request last week to modify the financial agreement, citing changed circumstances and financial hardship. Helen sighs deeply. The monthly allowance we negotiated was more than generous, considering he would have left me with nothing if his plan had succeeded, I finish. I know. But apparently living within a budget isn't a skill he's managed to develop. Through my network of carefully cultivated contacts, I've kept tabs on Greg's diminished circumstances. After 6 months of rejections from every reputable firm in the region, he'd finally secured a position at a small commercial property management company. Entry-level work far below his previous status and compensation. The apartment above the laundromat had been replaced by a slightly more respectable 1-bedroom in a distant suburb, but still worlds away from the luxury he'd once taken for granted. What will you do? Helen asks, genuine concern in her voice, though whether for me or her son remains unclear. Nothing has changed, I reply with quiet certainty. The agreement stands as written. He made his choices. She nods, understanding. Helen had lost many illusions about her son over these past months, watching him blame everyone but himself for his downfall. The firm, his colleagues, Crawford Development, even Natalie, who'd returned to Phoenix and recently announced her engagement to a local restaurant owner. The one person Greg rarely blamed publicly was me, perhaps the only wise choice he'd made throughout this ordeal. Our non-disclosure agreement ensured his silence, while the mountain of evidence I'd accumulated guaranteed his compliance. Which reminds me, Helen says, visibly shifting to a more pleasant topic as she reaches into her handbag. Richard and I have decided to sell the vacation house in Nantucket. We thought you might want first option to purchase it before we list it publicly. She slides a folder across the table containing photos and details of the charming waterfront cottage where the Preston family had spent summers for 3 generations. The same cottage where Greg had proposed to me during a sunset walk along the beach. It's a generous offer, I acknowledge, knowing that Helen and Richard could command a premium price in the current market. But I'm not sure. Just consider it, she urges gently. It would mean a great deal to us knowing it remained, with someone who appreciates its history. Besides, I believe you mentioned expanding your women's retreat program to the East Coast next year. My mind immediately catalogs the possibilities. The cottage's multiple bedrooms, its secluded garden, the private beach access. It would indeed be perfect for intimate leadership retreats, especially during the fall shoulder season when Nantucket's tourist crowds disperse. I'll think about it, I promise, tucking the folder into my portfolio for later consideration. As Helen prepares to leave, her driver already waiting in the circular driveway below, she pauses at the terrace doors, looking out over the spectacular bay view that had first drawn Greg to this property. He never would have done this with it, she says quietly, gesturing to the transformation taking shape around us. Greg saw this place as a trophy, not a home. Certainly not a community resource. I know, I reply simply. When Richard and I first visited after you completed renovations, he said something that stayed with me. Her eyes remained fixed on the horizon as she speaks. He said, Gregory wanted this house to show the world who he thought he was. Olivia is using it to show the world who she actually is. The observation strikes me with unexpected force, the simple truth of it crystallizing. 6 months of transformation into a single insight. After Helen departs, I return to my home office, the room that had once been designated in Greg's plans as his executive study, complete with leather club chairs and hunting prints. Now it's an airy space filled with natural light, collaborative work tables and walls lined with inspirational quotes from women leaders throughout history. My afternoon schedule includes video conferences with potential investors, a planning session for the new development project, and an interview with Architectural Digest about the property's transformation. But first, I allow myself a moment of reflection. I open my personal email, not the professional account my assistant manages, but the private one known only to my closest confidants. Among the messages is one from my former therapist, Dr. Levine, checking in as she occasionally does since I discontinued our sessions 3 months ago. Just a note to see how you're navigating this new chapter, she writes. Remember what we discussed about success being the best revenge, but healing being the best success. I smile at her gentle reminder. In the immediate aftermath of Greg's exposure, during those first turbulent weeks of public scandal and private recalibration, Dr. Levine had been my anchor. She helped me distinguish between justice, which I'd obtained, and vengeance, which would only prolong my connection to the pain. The opposite of love isn't hate, she'd told me during our final session. It's indifference. You'll know you've truly moved forward when his actions no longer have the power to elate or devastate you. By that measure, I've made considerable progress. The news of Greg's latest professional setback registers as little more than an informational data point. No surge of satisfaction, no lingering resentment, just another consequence of choices that no longer define my story. I respond to Dr. Levine's email with a brief update on my recent projects and a sincere appreciation for her continued interest in my well-being. The view from the other side is even better than I imagined, I conclude, attaching a photo of the sunrise over the bay taken from my terrace that morning. Just as I'm about to close my personal inbox, a new message arrives with a subject line that immediately catches my attention. Bluewater Bay Property Records Request. The sender is unfamiliar, a legal assistant at a firm I don't recognize. But the preview text visible in my inbox sends a cold ripple of awareness down my spine. Regarding Gregory Preston's claim of verbal agreement concerning property at 145 Bluewater Bay Road. I open the message, scanning its contents with growing disbelief. According to this legal assistant, Greg has engaged new representation and is preparing to challenge aspects of our property settlement, specifically my ownership of the Bluewater Bay estate. He allegedly claims we had a verbal agreement about joint investment in the property that supersedes the formal divorce settlement. For a moment, I feel the sharp edge of the old anger, the familiar indignation at his audacity, his persistent refusal to accept the consequences of his actions. Then, almost immediately, it subsides into something closer to weary resignation. This isn't a genuine legal threat. It's desperation masquerading as strategy. No court would entertain such a claim in the face of our exhaustively documented and court-approved settlement agreement, especially given Greg's history of deception already established in legal record. Still, the attempt itself reveals something significant. 6 months later, Greg remains fixated on what he lost rather than learning from why he lost it. I forward the email to Claire with a brief note. Nothing to worry about, but let's prepare a standard cease and desist response. Also, please verify whether this law firm actually represents GP or if this is another fishing expedition. Within minutes, my phone rings with Claire's incoming call. I've already made inquiries, she informs me without preamble. The firm exists, but they don't list Gregory Preston as a client. My contact there says they've never heard of him. So someone's using their letterhead fraudulently, I conclude. Interesting approach. There's more, Claire continues. I had our IT security team trace the email origin. It wasn't sent from the law firm's servers. The IP address traces back to a public computer at the downtown library. I close my eyes briefly, absorbing this new information. He sent it himself. Almost certainly. Do you want me to pursue this as attempted fraud? I consider the question carefully. Another legal confrontation would consume time and energy better devoted to my current projects. More importantly, it would re-establish a connection to Greg that I've worked diligently to sever. No, I decide. Document it for our records, but otherwise we ignore it. If he escalates with actual legal representation, we'll address it then. Are you sure? Claire sounds concerned. This could be the first move in a harassment campaign. It could be, I acknowledge, but it's more likely the last gasp of someone who's finally realizing what he's lost. Either way, engaging would only reward the behavior. After ending the call, I walk to the wall of windows overlooking the property's eastern gardens, currently being transformed from Greg's planned, putting green into a meditation labyrinth. The symbolism isn't lost on me. Replacing an activity focused on dominating terrain with one designed for introspection and self-awareness. The fake legal email is unsettling not because it poses any genuine threat, but because it demonstrates how little Greg has evolved despite his radically altered circumstances. He's still looking for shortcuts, still attempting to manipulate systems, still believing he can talk his way back into the privileges he squandered. My intercom buzzes, breaking my contemplation. Your 2 o'clock has arrived, Eliza announces. The architect for the Women's Resource Center is waiting in the conference room with the updated renderings. Thank you, I respond, gathering my notes. Please let her know I'll be right there. Before heading to the meeting, I make one additional call to Rebecca. "I need background on Gregory Preston's current employment situation," I tell her when she answers. "Specifically, whether he's still with Summit Property Management and what his financial status appears to be." "Has something happened?" Rebecca asks, instantly alert. "Just covering bases," I assure her. "But if you could expedite this, I'd appreciate it." As I make my way to the conference room, I pass through what was once intended to be the formal dining room where Greg had planned to host power dinners with clients and colleagues. Now it serves as a bright collaborative workspace where my team gathers for project planning. The massive mahogany dining table he'd selected in a furniture showroom has been replaced by modular work surfaces that can be reconfigured for different types of meetings. The architect, Sophia Mendez, rises to greet me as I enter. A brilliant designer in her mid-40s who'd been repeatedly passed over for partnership at her previous firm, she now heads her own successful practice, specializing in community-focused projects. "Olivia, wait until you see the revisions," she begins enthusiastically, spreading drawings across the table. "We've incorporated the additional counseling spaces you requested without compromising the childcare area." For the next hour, we immerse ourselves in the details of the resource center, adjusting room layouts, discussing materials, refining the flow between public and private spaces. The work absorbs me completely, pushing thoughts of Greg's desperate email maneuver to the periphery of my consciousness. This is my reality now, creating spaces that serve and empower, rather than impress and intimidate. The contrast between Greg's vision for his professional legacy and what I'm actually building could not be more stark. As the meeting concludes, I walk Sophia to her car, discussing timeline expectations for breaking ground on the center. We pause briefly on the front steps, admiring the landscaping changes already taking shape across the property's entrance. "You know, when I first visited 6 months ago, this place felt like a monument," Sophia observes, gesturing to the imposing facade that had initially attracted Greg to the property. "Now it feels like a mission." Her comment stays with me throughout the remainder of the afternoon, through calls with investors and planning sessions with my team. A monument versus a mission, the perfect distillation of the fundamental difference between Greg's ambitions and my purpose. By evening, when I finally retire to the master suite, now redesigned as a serene retreat, rather than the ostentatious showplace Greg had envisioned with its planned marble columns and oversized soaking tub, Rebecca calls with the information I requested. "He's no longer with Summit Property Management," she reports. "Left about 3 weeks ago under unclear circumstances, though my source hinted at interpersonal issues with management." Not surprising. Greg had never handled authority well, especially when it came from those he considered beneath his talents or social standing. "Financial status?" I ask, slipping off my heels and settling into the window seat overlooking the bay. "Increasingly precarious. He's missed payments on his car loan twice in the past 3 months. The apartment management filed a late notice last month. No new employment on record yet, though he's been interviewing with several smaller agencies outside the metropolitan area." I absorb this information without commentary, watching the moonlight create silver patterns across the water. The same view that had once featured in Greg's elaborate success fantasies now serves as my evening meditation backdrop. "There's one more thing," Rebecca adds, her tone suggesting she's saved the most significant detail for last. "He's been attending mandatory financial counseling sessions as part of the Ethics Board's requirements for possible future license reinstatement." This catches my attention. Voluntarily? Apparently so. His counselor submitted a positive progress report to the board last week, noting genuine engagement with the process and developing awareness of prior misconduct patterns. I'm silent for a moment, processing this unexpected development. Of all the consequences Greg has faced, professional disgrace, financial setback, social ostracism, this is the first indication of potential personal growth. "Do you think it's genuine?" Rebecca asks, knowing me well enough to follow my thoughts. "I think it's irrelevant to us either way," I respond finally. "His development is his own journey now." After ending the call, I open my laptop to review the final plans for tomorrow's meeting with potential investors. But my concentration wavers, pulled back to thoughts of Greg's apparent counseling progress juxtaposed against his fraudulent, legal email. The contradiction puzzles me until I remember something Dr. Levine once observed about the pattern of recovery from narcissistic tendencies. Progress isn't linear. There will be moments of genuine insight followed immediately by reversion to manipulative tactics. The real measure is whether the periods of insight gradually lengthen while the manipulative episodes diminish. Though, perhaps that explains the discordant information. Greg taking 2 steps forward in counseling, then 1 step back with a desperate attempt to reclaim what he'd lost. Either way, it's no longer my responsibility to track his moral development or manage his consequences. My phone chimes with an incoming text from Emily Crawford. "Investor package looks solid. Mother's Foundation especially interested in the leadership retreat component. Breakfast tomorrow to finalize before the meeting?" I respond affirmatively, then set my phone aside and turn my attention back to the moonlit bay. In the distance, lights from passing boats create moving constellations on the water's surface, ephemeral patterns appearing and disappearing in the gentle current. 6 months ago, standing in that boardroom watching Greg's carefully constructed facade crumble, I couldn't have imagined the life I'm building now. Not just the professional success or the valuable connections, but the profound sense of purpose that infuses each project, each decision, each transformation of space from monument to mission. The journey from underestimated housewife to respected industry leader hasn't been without challenges. There were those who questioned my qualifications despite my previous experience, who suggested my success stemmed from sympathy rather than skill, who whispered that my prominence was built entirely on the scandal of Greg's downfall. Those voices have largely been silenced by the undeniable results of my work, the successful projects, the innovative approaches, the growing wait list of clients seeking my particular vision of development that serves communities rather than merely extracting profit from them. As I prepare for bed, I notice a small package on my nightstand, elegantly wrapped with a note from Helen. "Found this while sorting through old family photos. Thought you might want it. H." Inside is a framed photograph I've never seen before, taken at the Preston family's Nantucket cottage during our first summer as a couple. In it, I'm standing on the beach at sunset, looking not at the camera but out toward the horizon, my expression thoughtful and focused. Greg is beside me, but his attention is directed at his reflection in the cottage window, adjusting his hair, with one hand while the other rests possessively on my shoulder. The image captures with uncanny precision the dynamic that defined our relationship. His self-absorption contrasted with my outward focus, his concern with appearances versus my interest in possibilities. I study the photograph for a long moment, recognizing the young woman I was, already perceptive but not yet empowered, observant but not yet ready to act on what I observed. If I could speak to her across the years, I would tell her that the quiet strength she's cultivating in silence will eventually reshape not just her own life, but the lives of countless other women. I would tell her that being underestimated can become an unexpected advantage when combined with patience, preparation, and perfect timing. I would tell her that one day she'll stand on the terrace of a dream house, looking out over a bay at sunrise, not as the supportive wife of an ambitious man, but as the architect of her own remarkable transformation. I place the photograph in my bedside drawer rather than displaying it, a piece of history worth preserving but not centering in my current narrative. Then I turn out the light, listening to the gentle rhythm of waves against the shoreline below. Tomorrow brings new opportunities, new challenges, new chapters to write in a story that's finally, completely my own. Tonight, I sleep soundly in the master bedroom of the house he coveted, alone but fulfilled. While somewhere across town, my ex-husband continues learning the most expensive lesson of his privileged life. Sometimes the quietest person in the bar room is building something extraordinary right under your nose. 1 year to the day after I signed the papers for the Bluewater Bay estate, I host a gala fundraiser for the Women's Financial Independence Foundation, the nonprofit organization I established to provide resources, education, and legal support to women navigating financial challenges after divorce or bereavement. The sprawling lawn that overlooks the bay is transformed with elegant white tents, soft lighting, and arrangements of wildflowers cultivated from the property's own gardens. 200 guests mill about the grounds, enjoying the catering from a women-owned culinary collective and admiring the art installations created by female artists from the community college, where I now teach a seminar on real estate investment. The event has already exceeded our fundraising goal, with donations still flowing in through the mobile campaign Rebecca orchestrated with characteristic efficiency. "Olivia, this is extraordinary." Emily Crawford approaches, champagne flute in hand, gesturing to the scene around us. "When you said you wanted to mark the anniversary with something meaningful, I had no idea you meant." She pauses, searching for the right words, creating an entire movement. I smile, taking in the diverse crowd gathered on what was once intended to be Greg's trophy property, the ultimate status symbol he'd coveted for years as proof of his ascension to the upper echelons of real estate royalty. Now it serves as the headquarters for an organization dedicated to dismantling the very power structures that enabled men like him to treat spouses as decorative accessories rather than equal partners. One woman's experience becomes another woman's warning sign, I tell Emily, echoing the slogan that appears on our foundation's materials. I just wanted to transform what happened to me into something that might prevent it from happening to others. "Well, you've certainly done that," she responds, nodding toward the resource center visible through the trees on the adjacent property. In its first 6 months of operation, the center has already assisted over 300 women with legal consultations, financial planning, and career development services. "There's someone who specifically asked to meet you," Emily adds, steering me toward a quiet corner of the tent where a woman in her early 30s waits nervously, clutching a portfolio to her chest. "Margot completed our first financial literacy program last month. She has something she wants to share with you." I excuse myself from a conversation with potential donors and make my way through the crowd, pausing occasionally to thank supporters and acknowledge the volunteers who've helped make the foundation's first year so successful. When I reach Margot, her eyes widen with something close to reverence. "Mrs. Preston. I mean, Ms. Winters," she corrects herself, remembering that I've reclaimed my maiden name. "I can't tell you what an honor this is. Your program changed my life." "Please call me Olivia," I say warmly, guiding her to a secluded bench overlooking the bay. "Emily mentioned you completed our financial literacy series." Margot nods, eagerly, her initial nervousness giving way to enthusiasm. "I did. After my divorce, I was completely lost. My ex-husband handled all our finances. At least that's what he told me. Turns out he was mostly creating debt in my name while hiding assets in accounts I knew nothing about. The familiar pattern sends a ripple of recognition through me." "How did you discover what was happening?" "Pure luck," she admits. "I opened a piece of mail addressed to him by mistake, a statement from an investment account I didn't know existed. When I confronted him, he said it was too complicated for me to understand and that I should focus on what I was good at, meaning keeping house and looking pretty." "I recognize the script," I say quietly. "But here's the thing," Margot continues, her voice stronger now. "I was an accounting major before I dropped out to support his career. He knew that. He deliberately undermined my confidence until I actually believed I couldn't understand our finances." She opens the portfolio she's been holding, revealing official-looking documents. "After your program, I hired a forensic accountant like you suggested. We found everything. Hidden accounts, unauthorized loans, even a vacation property he purchased with another woman while we were still married. "And now?" I ask, already suspecting the answer from her confident demeanor. "Now I'm back in school finishing my accounting degree," she beams. "The settlement from the hidden assets is paying for my education, and I've started helping other women in my support group understand their financial documents." She hesitates before continuing. "But that's not why I wanted to meet you. I brought you this." From the portfolio, she withdraws a small, elegantly framed mission statement, the kind often displayed in offices or foundation lobbies. "I wrote this after completing your program. It's going to hang in my new office when I graduate. I thought, you might want a copy." I accept the frame, reading the carefully crafted text. "In gratitude for those who showed me my own power when I had forgotten it existed. In commitment to helping other women discover their strength when they have been taught to doubt it. In dedication to creating a world where financial independence is not a battle to be won, but a birthright to be claimed." Beneath the text is a simple attribution, inspired by Olivia Winters and the Women's Financial Independence Foundation. For a moment, I'm speechless, genuinely moved by this tangible evidence that my own painful experience has created ripples of transformation beyond myself. "Margot, this is..." I begin, searching for the right words. "It's nothing compared to what you've built here," she interrupts, gesturing to the foundation's headquarters behind us. "But I wanted you to know that your story didn't just help me recover financially, it helped me reimagine what's possible." As we talk further about her plans for the future, I'm struck by how much of myself I recognize in this woman, the same determined intelligence that had once been channeled into supporting a husband's career, now reclaimed for her own purpose and passion. Our conversation is interrupted by Rebecca, who approaches with tablet in hand and the focused expression that indicates important news. "Sorry to interrupt," she says, her voice pitched low enough that only I can hear. "But there's something you need to know. He's here." I don't need to ask who he is. Only one person would merit this level of security alert at today's event. "Where?" I ask calmly, making my excuses to Margot with a promise to speak again, before the evening ends. "Parking area," Rebecca responds as we move away from the crowded tent. "Security spotted him about 10 minutes ago. He hasn't attempted to enter the property, just sitting in his car watching the event. We've alerted local police as a precaution, but technically he's on public property and hasn't violated the perimeter." I consider this information carefully. The restraining order expired months ago, and we hadn't renewed it since Greg had maintained his distance after the initial divorce proceedings. His sporadic attempts at contact, including that fraudulent legal email, had dwindled to nothing over the past few months. "Has he made any attempt to communicate with guests or staff?" I ask, already scanning the road visible beyond the property's ornate gates. "None," Rebecca confirms. "According to security, he appears to be alone. The vehicle is a rental, mid-range sedan, nothing flashy." I nod, processing this unexpected development. "Let's continue monitoring, but no need to disrupt the event unless he approaches the gates. Make sure Thomas knows to deny entry if he attempts it." Rebecca hesitates, clearly expecting a more dramatic reaction. "That's it? You don't want to have him removed?" "He's observing a public event from public property," I remind her. "Legally, we have no grounds to do more unless he attempts to trespass or make contact." What I don't articulate is my suspicion about why Greg might be here today. The anniversary of the property transfer wouldn't hold significance for most people, but for someone as obsessed with status symbols as Greg had been, this date, marking exactly 1 year since his dream house became my foundation headquarters, would resonate powerfully. I returned to my hosting duties, circulating among donors and community partners with practiced ease, but remain acutely aware of Greg's presence beyond the gates, not from fear or anxiety, but from a detached curiosity about what this appearance might signify. An hour passes, then 2. The evening program begins with speeches from women who've benefited from the Foundation's services, followed by recognition of key donors and volunteers. Throughout it all, I maintain my composure, occasionally catching Rebecca's eye for a subtle update on our unexpected observer. As the formal program concludes and guests begin to depart, Rebecca approaches again. "He's still there," she informs me quietly. "Security reports he hasn't moved or attempted contact. Just watching." I make a decision that surprises even me. I'm going to speak with him. Rebecca's expression shifts from surprise to concern. "Are you sure that's wise? We don't know his mental state or intentions." "We'll take precautions," I assure her. "Have Thomas bring the car around to the service entrance. I'll meet with Greg off property in public view of security. No private conversations, no entering his vehicle." She reluctantly agrees, arranging for my driver to prepare the car while security positions team members at strategic points along the perimeter. Within minutes, I'm being driven toward the main road where Greg's rental car remains parked at a discreet distance from the estate's entrance. Thomas, ever protective, voices his reservations. "I'll stay within sight the entire time, Ms. Winters. If you raise your hand or appear distressed in any way, I'll intervene immediately." "Thank you, Thomas," I reply, genuinely appreciative of his concern. But I suspect this will be a brief and uneventful conversation. As we approach Greg's vehicle, I can see him through the windshield, an almost startling contrast to the confident, immaculately groomed man who once dominated our shared life. His hair is longer than the precisely maintained cut he'd always favored, his posture less commanding behind the wheel of the ordinary sedan. He notices our approach and straightens, clearly surprised that I've initiated contact rather than having security remove him from the vicinity. After a moment's hesitation, he exits his vehicle, standing awkwardly beside it as Thomas brings my car to a stop a cautious distance away. I step out, maintaining a clear boundary between us, aware of Thomas, watching vigilantly and security personnel positioned nearby. For several seconds, Greg and I simply regard each other across the pavement, former spouses now connected only by legal documents and a history neither of us can rewrite. "Olivia," he finally says, his voice carrying a note of uncertainty I've never heard before. "You look, well, what are you doing here, Greg?" I ask directly, seeing no benefit in prolonged preliminaries. He gestures vaguely toward the estate where departing guests stream through the gates in luxury vehicles. "I heard about the Foundation, the work you're doing. I wanted to see it for myself." "From the parking lot?" I raise an eyebrow, skeptical of this explanation. "I know I'm not welcome inside," he acknowledges, a flash of the old resentment briefly surfacing before he suppresses it with visible effort. Today is the anniversary. I thought maybe seeing what you've created would help me finally accept that it's really over." The honesty of this admission catches me off guard. I study him more carefully, noting the subtle changes that extend beyond his appearance. There's something different in his demeanor, less entitlement, more uncertainty, as though the carefully constructed facade of superiority has been irreparably cracked. "Your foundation," he continues when I don't immediately respond. "It's impressive. My mother speaks highly of the programs you've developed." "You're in contact with Helen?" This genuinely surprises me. Helen had been clear about maintaining boundaries with her son while he sorted himself out, as she put it. "Recently, yes," he nods. "Monthly dinners, part of my recovery process." He says the last words with a self-consciousness that suggests they come from therapy sessions rather than his natural vocabulary. "I see," I respond neutrally, unwilling to be drawn into discussions about his personal development. "And is observing me from parking lots also part of this recovery process?" He winces at the directness of my question. "I deserved that. No, this was impulsive, probably inappropriate. I just wanted to see what became of the place. And what do you think? I ask, genuinely curious despite myself. Greg looks past me toward the estate, its elegant silhouette now illuminated against the darkening sky, the foundation's understated signage visible near the entrance. I think, he says slowly, that you've done something better with it than I ever would have. The admission seems to cost him something, a final relinquishing of the fantasy he'd constructed around the property and what it represented. The irony isn't lost on me, he continues with unexpected self-awareness. I wanted that house to prove I'd made it, to showcase my success. You actually use it to create success for others. I remain silent, unwilling to either validate or challenge his observation. After a year of building my foundation and my new life, I've learned that my energy is better invested in forward momentum than in processing Greg's belated insights. I've been in therapy, he offers after a moment, as though reading my thoughts. Real therapy, not just the court-mandated counseling. It's been educational. I'm glad, I say simply, meaning it despite everything. Human growth is always preferable to stagnation, even when it comes too late to repair what's been broken. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he clarifies quickly, or reconciliation. I know that's not. I know too much has happened. Then what are you asking for, Greg? I maintain my direct approach, aware of Thomas checking his watch discreetly, signaling that I have other commitments awaiting my return. He considers the question carefully before answering. Closure, maybe, or just the chance to acknowledge that I recognize what I threw away, both with you and with the life we could have built. There's a vulnerability in his admission that the old Greg would never have permitted himself to display, an honesty that suggests his therapy might indeed be producing genuine change rather than merely performative remorse. My therapist says I used acquisitions, property, possessions, even relationships, to fill a void I wasn't willing to examine, he continues, the words coming more freely now. The house was the ultimate symbol, the thing I thought would finally make me feel complete. And now? I prompt when he pauses. Now I'm learning to build something internal rather than collecting external validations. He gestures toward my foundation headquarters. Obviously not on the scale of what you've created, but authentic at least. A car door closes nearby as another guest departs the fundraiser, reminding me of responsibilities waiting beyond this unexpected exchange. Despite whatever growth Greg might be experiencing, my life has moved decisively forward without him. I should return to my guests, I say, taking a step back toward where Thomas waits with the car door open. Greg nods, accepting this natural conclusion. Of course. Thank you for not having security remove me. I know you would have been justified. As I turn to leave, he speaks once more, his voice carrying a note of genuine admiration rather than the resentment I might have expected. What you've built here, Olivia, it's remarkable. Not just the foundation, but the person you've become without me diminishing you. I pause, considering whether to respond to this unexpectedly perceptive observation. In the end, I offer him the only honest reply I can give. I was always this person, Greg. You just never took the time to see it. With that, I return to my waiting car, directing Thomas to take me back to the estate where Foundation board members and close friends remain for a more intimate gathering following the public event. As we drive through the ornate gates that now bear the Foundation's name rather than a family crest, I glance back once to see Greg still standing beside his rental car, watching as we disappear up the winding drive. There's no satisfaction in seeing him diminished, no vindictive pleasure in the reversal of our fortunes. Instead, I feel a quiet certainty that the path I've chosen, transforming personal pain into community purpose, represents a far more meaningful victory than any revenge scenario could have provided. Back at the estate, the remaining guests have gathered in what was once intended to be Greg's trophy room. the cavernous space he'd designated for displaying hunting mementos and sports memorabilia, now transformed into a bright gallery showcasing artwork created by women rebuilding their lives after domestic trauma. Helen approaches as I rejoin the group, her intuition as sharp as ever. Was that Gregory I glimpsed near the gates? Yes, I confirm, accepting a glass of sparkling water from a passing server. He wanted to see what became of his dream house. She studies my expression carefully. And how was that encounter for you? Surprisingly, uneventful, I reply after brief consideration. He seems changed. He is, Helen confirms with the measured optimism of a mother who's witnessed both her son's worst behaviors and his halting attempts at redemption. The therapist believes he's making genuine progress, though the road ahead remains long. I'm glad, I say sincerely. Everyone deserves the opportunity to grow. Helen smiles, squeezing my hand affectionately. That generosity of spirit is exactly why you're succeeding where he faltered. You build people up. He only ever knew how to elevate himself. Our conversation is interrupted by Claire, who approaches with the evening's final fundraising totals displayed on her tablet. The numbers surpass even our most optimistic projections, ensuring that the foundation can expand its legal aid program and launch the scholarship initiative we've been developing for women pursuing careers in finance and real estate. Congratulations, Claire beams, showing the figures to the board members gathered nearby. The Women's Financial Independence Foundation is officially self-sustaining. A cheer rises from the assembled supporters, followed by impromptu toasts and expressions of appreciation for what we've collectively built. In the celebratory moment, I find myself momentarily above it all, observing the scene with a sense of peaceful accomplishment. 1 year ago, I stood in an attorney's office signing papers for a house that represented freedom from deception and the reclamation of my own agency. Today, that same property has become the centerpiece of a movement, helping hundreds of women reclaim their power and reshape their futures. Later, after the last guests have departed and the estate has settled into nighttime stillness, I walk alone through the meditation garden that now occupies what was once planned as Greg's pudding green. The path winds through native plantings, illuminated by soft ground lighting, eventually leading to a simple stone bench overlooking the bay. I sit in the quiet darkness, reflecting on the day's unexpected encounter and what it revealed about both Greg's journey and my own. His appearance at the foundation event wasn't the disruption it might once have been, no longer a threat to my peace or a complication in my narrative, merely a brief intersection of separate paths now moving in decidedly different directions. The moonlight creates a silver path across the water, reminiscent of the view I admired that very first night after acquiring the property. Then, my victory had felt intensely personal, a triumph over betrayal, a reclaiming of respect. Now, a year later, it has evolved into something far more meaningful, a platform for collective empowerment that extends well beyond my individual experience. My phone chimes softly with an incoming message from Rebecca. Final count: $1, $2 million raised tonight. Already receiving inquiries about replicating the program in 3 additional cities. Your vision is becoming a movement. I smile at the validation, but find I don't need it the way I once might have. The true measure of tonight's success isn't captured in dollar amounts or expansion requests, but in the transformed lives of women like Margot who are discovering their own capacity for independence and rebuilding. As I prepare to return to the house, my house, reimagined and repurposed according to my vision rather than Greg's status-seeking fantasies, I find myself thinking about the framed mission statement Margot presented earlier. Her words captured something essential about the journey from diminishment to empowerment, from being underestimated to creating lasting impact. Tomorrow brings new challenges, meetings with potential expansion partners, curriculum development for the financial literacy program, planning sessions for the legal aid clinic's growth. The work continues, evolving beyond its origins in personal vindication to become a sustainable force for change. But tonight, sitting in the garden with the bay spread before me and the foundation headquarters rising behind me, I allow myself a moment to fully appreciate the symmetry of the journey. The property that Greg coveted as the ultimate status symbol has become a sanctuary for those recovering from exactly the kind of dismissal and deception he practiced so casually. The dream house he planned to acquire as a monument to his success now serves as headquarters for a mission that helps others reclaim their power and rebuild their lives. The view he wanted to possess is now shared with women gathering strength to face their own futures with confidence and clarity. If there's a more perfect form of justice than this transformation, I cannot imagine what it might be. As I stand to return to the house, I notice a single light still illuminating the foundation's sign at the entrance gates. The elegant script that reads, Women's Financial Independence Foundation, above the tagline that has become our guiding principle: reclaiming power, rebuilding lives, reimagining possibilities. In the quiet darkness, surrounded by the garden I've created and the mission I've built, I finally understand that the true victory was never about defeating Greg or claiming his dream house. It was about discovering that sometimes being underestimated becomes its own kind of superpower, especially when combined with patience, preparation, and the perfect moment to reveal exactly who you've been all along. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.